So we're live and recording.
And I believe that we are 5 o'clock and we do have quorum, so we can proceed with the meeting. Donc, bonsoir. Bienvenue à la réunion spéciale de conseil. Welcome to our special council meeting. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Aucune déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire? Hearing none. Is there a mover and a seconder for the agenda? Conseiller Normand. Conseiller Chris.
It's moved by Councillor Laberge, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Be it resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of council held on September 22nd, 2022 be approved as presented.
Any objections? Aucune objection? None. Carried. Adopté. Under new business, we have 4 items. And the first item is the award for the purchase of a backhoe tractor. Is there a mover and a seconder? Conseiller Chris, Conseiller Normand.
It is moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Laberge. Be it resolved that the award for the purchase of a backhoe tractor for the Public Works Department be awarded to Tormont Cat, having submitted a bid of $182,155 plus HST, meeting all of the requirements, less the trade-in of the 2009 Case 580 valued at $44,000 for a net purchase cost of $138,155 plus HST.
Any questions? Aucun commentaire, question, Conseiller Chris.
So just for my own information, we're allowed to approve this even though we're lame duck, and that's because it was budgeted originally and it's within budget, and so this is just fine to approve. That's correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Just two questions to the CEO. Is it within budget of what the council had approved for the acquisition of the capital equipment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And do you know whether or not if there was any attempt to inquire through AMO, the local authority services, to find out if we could have had a better deal or not for the same type of equipment?
No, I don't have that information.
Is it possible to find out and let us know at a future date?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? None. Any objections? Aucune objection? None. Carried. Adopté. The second item is the authorization to sign the Twiggs restaurant lease renewal. Is there a mover and a seconder? Conseiller Lease, Conseiller Léo.
It is moved by Councillor Lee Senecal and seconded by Councillor Mollet. And be it resolved that the mayor and the CAO be authorized to sign a gross lease renewal agreement with 907-3361 Canada Inc. operating as Twiggs Restaurant for the property located at 300 King Street, Minnehaha Bay in Sturgeon Falls.
Are there any questions or comments? Conseiller Lease.
Well, just I read it, but contract is sometimes difficult to put all the pieces together. But it seemed that all the directive that was giving, it was what we had asked, and this is what is on the contract, Mr. Barbeau?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I was just confirming the same thing. It was that as the consensus of the previous meeting when we did discuss what we were hoping for a contract.
Okay. And you have the answer. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? And as we can see, if I may, it's a 5-year lease subject to an extension of an additional 5 years. And the lease is with a new proponent or a new individual that would be operating Twiggs effective November 1st, 2022. as per what is provided to us. And I guess I just wanted the assurance that the assumption would be that the actual operator is continuing with the operation until October 31st.
They're operating under an existing lease.
Okay. But that the signing authority for the, okay, so I guess peut-être ma question était pas bien, bien posée. L'opérateur de Twiggs en ce moment a vendu à une nouvelle individu qui va opérer Twiggs. Est-ce que c'est pris pour acquis que l'opérateur existant continue jusqu'au 1er octobre?
Oui, c'est pris pour acquis que l'opérateur existant continue au même terme que l'ancien opérateur.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments? Are there any objections? Aucune objection? None? Carried? Adopté. On procède avec la troisième item, the third item, and that's the authorization to sign the OPP lease agreement. Is there a mover and a seconder? Conseiller Normand, Conseiller Léo.
Excuse me. It is moved by Councillor Lebel, seconded by Councillor Mallette. Be it resolved that the mayor and the CAO be authorized to sign a net office lease agreement, L12432, with Her Majesty the Queen and the Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Government and Consumer Services for the property located at 880 Levac Road in Cache Bay.
Are there any questions or comments? Conseiller Chris?
I think we're signing that with the king, not the queen.
Sorry, I didn't hear correctly, Conseiller Chris.
We changed for the
think-
king. No.
Yeah, you just need to change the resolution, I believe, because it says queen, it should say king now.
Le contrat, c'est avec la queen.
Wait, I heard now, and I know that the CEO is looking at the resolution.
So I made the amendment. Thank you for catching that. When this was developed, Her Majesty was still alive.
Are there any further questions or comments? There was a memo that I believe there were a comment that was shared to all members of council from our Director of Corporate Services making the distinction in the rental agreement. And my apologies, I'm just trying to locate it. Does anyone have it in their package?
Well, I have the whole package here.
Okay, not the actual lease agreement, but I believe there was a memo that was attached to the lease
You'd like-
agreement.
Would like me to read it?
Yes, can you, because I just wanted to get clarification on it.
Okay, thank you. The attached lease is for the OPP facility at 880 Levac Road. It reflects a 48.8% provincial responsibility and a 52.2% municipal responsibility. The lease includes a base rent and an operating rent. The operating rent is reconciled annually. The lease includes a commencement date of October 1st, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Conseiller Léo?
Oh, you're mute.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Could I have a recorded vote, please, Mr. CEO?
Sure, I'm Mr. Deputy Clerk when I'm running the meeting.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Just a bit of levity. For my next job.
Are there any questions before we proceed with the vote? Conseiller Ali?
Just a question, I don't recall, Mr. Barbeau, when is so they're going back to October 1st, which they opened a couple of months before, but that's not a big deal. When is the payment that we're starting? I forgot, I tried to find the documentation. I know we had the two resolution that we passed, one for our part, the 52, and then the part of the ministry for 48. And I don't recall the date of this. I think they start in October this year.
Probably. I really didn't concern myself
Okay.
with the terms of payment, but I can look at it. Term 10 years, extension option, fair enough. I'd have to find that, but typically it could be quarterly, it could be monthly. There will be a retroactive adjustment on the first payment back to October 1st, 2021, to correct, not to correct, but just as a point of information. The OPP, in agreement with us and staff, were allowed to move in. I believe it was, they were actually operational by September 15th, but the agreement covers the fact that we allowed them to do that. And it was called a soft opening, and that was always understood that we would be starting at October. So it could be monthly. It really, that's an accounting question, but it's the government of Ontario and CBRE are going to be paying us, and I can find it if it's absolutely necessary. But I'm
No,
sure.
this I understand perfectly, the time that what you're explaining. It's just that I forgot when we're starting to pay for the 52% share for the, whatever is 15 year, I think it is. And the date that, I think it's October, but I'm not quite sure. But if you don't remember, it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's just it doesn't interfere with the contract or the lease. It's just a question that I had.
So to be
it's
clear to council and to the public, the share of the municipality is 52%. Obviously, we're not billing ourselves for, that's a requirement that we have to fund. So the activity that back in, I believe, 2019-18, and the analysis that they did at that time, which forms this agreement, was that all other usage for that building amounted for 48.8%. So therefore, there are highway policing and the other areas that they cover amounted for 48% of the activity. And so this lease represents 48% of the total cost of that building, and they're going to be paying us back for that.
Yeah, this I understand. Okay, no problem.
Yes, Madam Mayor, through you. Also, I've read the thing, I did, from what I understand, I read the whole package, it took me 3 hours. But it's going to be a monthly remittance.
I know, I yeah, I know, I do. It's just the date. I cannot
They
need
start with, they
I
owe us
know
12
that.
payments.
You don't understand my question. It's okay. I don't have an issue. It was, you were not even here when we
Okay.
approved that. It was the lease, not the lease, it was for the loan.
Oh, the
that
loan.
The municipality, the 52% and the loan that they were repairing us, not the loan, but they were repaying, because there's a difference. We're not gonna be paying ourselves. We're gonna be.
Okay, now
I want to see if it matched the lease.
So, well, to respond to your
And
question,
also, sorry, Mr.
Okay.
Also what I like is it's plus any taxes on that portion, they're fully responsible, maintenance costs and all that. And I see at the end there's a lot of pages that we have to use to submit our monthly operational costs and maintenance and all that. So
if
there's,
you'd like to
they
explain the
cover
lease,
a lot of the
Okay,
expenses.
Can we let the CEO?
Yeah, please.
Can we let the CEO respond to?
so my understanding, and I read it very quickly, but I read leases very quickly. The base rent covers what is kind of like the market rent, kind of like the rent that you had for Twiggs, right? So there's a negotiated rent and it's about market or base. That is a 20-year rent. And then on that same rent, the add-on is the capital recapture. So the 52% of, I'm just going to round things up so you have the concepts. Let's say it was a $10 million building. The 5.2 million that they own on that building is amortized over the 20 years and divided by the amount of space they have. So anyway, so that's how the rent works. After 20 years, the rent will drop because the building or their portion shall be paid for. The other parts of the rent, there is a small clause that talks about the fact that the province of Ontario owes property taxes. And that is still up in the air with respect to what the actual value is, but they would be paying that portion is what that second portion is. The third portion deals with the operating costs, and the operating costs are an assumption of what it cost us to run that building. And it's a baseline of 2020 when we started negotiating with them. So it's obvious that if it's an operating cost, there's language in that agreement that says, should we pay less, we will have to pay them back. should we pay more, they will have to pay us more. And so the operating costs are what are the actual operating costs times their portion of the building, and that's where it is. So it's kind of like OPP reconciliation for even the annual budgets. That's basically how it works. So there's operating, the cost of shoveling or snow removal, janitorial, lights, utilities, blah blah blah, and that is an estimate of cost, and then it'll be finalized plus or minus. But the concept of of what was presented to council is fully captured in this document.
Sure it is. I just needed to thank you for all the information, but I understand that part. It just, I thought maybe one of us will remember the date that they would
No.
start giving us the money to pay their part, and we would start paying their portion. So that's okay. Thank you.
So, if there's no further questions, for the public that is listening, when we did the construction of the new building, we got 2 different loans. One, which was for the equivalent of the contribution of the municipality, 52%, and another loan for 48% to make the distinction of basically what was the obligation of the municipality and the obligation of Nipissing West Police. Now, with this lease agreement, we are capturing the loan portion obligation of that 48%. Plus, it also includes the space allocation that they're using for the 48%.
Right. It's to simplify it. It doesn't need to be complicated. We obviously don't have $10 million in our cash or our bank account, so we borrowed money, and we have all. We knew that we had a repayment that was captured in the forecast of savings, and that the remainder would be paid for by the province of Ontario, and this agreement captures that.
Okay, so is it fair to say that if anyone does question, the amount of the loan for that 48% is captured in the rental agreement?
Yes.
And also is captured for the 48% dedication space. So it's a combination of the debt plus the utilization of that 48% space of the entire building.
Perfect.
Okay, that's why I was looking for the memo of Alyssa Cradoff, the Director of Corporate Services, to be able to make that distinction. Okay, no, that's appreciated. And on that note, okay, so
I believe there's a
Okay.
recorded vote requested, Madam Mayor.
yeah, I was just going to make sure that there was no further questions or further comments pertaining to the agreement that's being presented to us. There's none? Okay. So if you want to proceed with a recorded vote.
So I have to look at who's here. So Councillor Fisher.
It's Councillor, oh, sorry, it's not there. Yes.
I'm one up on you, sir. Councillor Larrabee,
Yes, sir.
Councillor Millet,
Yes.
Councillor Laberge,
Oui.
Councillor Rovita,
Yes.
Councillor Lee Senecal,
Oui.
et Mayor Joanne Savage.
Wait,
It's carried.
thank you. Now we move on to the last item on the agenda, and that is providing support for the Separate East Municipal Association resolution regarding the federal boundary. We had discussed the matter at our 2 prior meetings ago, and it has to do with the proposed changes to federal electoral boundaries. And there's 2 areas of concern. One is losing a seat for the north, and the other one is the realignment of what's being proposed for the boundary changes. And as identified, SEMA, the Separate East Municipal Association, which consist of our neighboring municipalities, French River, Killarney, St. Charles, Marksday, Warren, and also West Nipissing, completely opposed to what is being proposed
Right.
by the commission in reducing a seat and also realigning the boundaries for Nickel Belt. So before us, we have the copy of the resolution that was endorsed by the association. And
Madam Mayor,
what I'm going to,
can I
sorry,
read it into the record and then you can move
that's what
forward?
I was going to ask, if we can have a mover and a seconder for the resolution to be read. Conseiller Normand, Conseiller Chris.
Okay, here's my bedtime story. No, I'm not talking about it being, it's just very long. It's moved by Councillor Dabao, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Whereas the proposed Federal Electoral Boundary Commission has proposed to remove one of the electoral ridings from Northern Ontario. And whereas the proposed riding of Manitoulin Nickel Belt would remove the municipalities of St. Charles, Marksday, Warren, and West Nipissing from the current Nickel Belt riding. And whereas the municipalities of French River, Killarney, St. Charles, Marksday, Warren, and West Nipissing work together under the umbrella of the Sudbury East Municipal Association for the betterment of each municipality. Currently, SEMA is comprised of one geopolitical entity, and any changes would fragment, diminish, and reduce access to federal representation for area residents. And whereas the commission is not taking into consideration the uniqueness of the said municipalities in Sudbury East, including the difficulty in competing for limited amounts of funding, any changes to the current configuration would exacerbate the situation. And whereas the commission did not take into consideration that the current Sudbury East boundaries include a substantial portion of Francophone citizens, by removing St. Charles, Marksday, Warren, and West Nipissing from Nickel Belt would make it extremely difficult to advocate for a Francophone population and would be detrimental for those municipalities being forced into mostly Anglophone ridings. And whereas the proposal to diminish Northern Ontario's voice in Parliament will have detrimental effect on participatory democracy and regional development, as issues in Northern Ontario are significantly different than those in Southern Ontario. And whereas the Electoral Commission did not take under consideration that the courts have ruled that representation in Canada's democracy is not based merely on population, but on regions of interest and the right of citizens to engage with their elected representative. And whereas any changes to electoral boundaries should be based on the principles of maintaining communities of interest within the boundaries that are equitable in terms of culture, language, and geography. And whereas SEMA has a history of working collaboratively on projects and issues in our current riding, it will be inefficient to separate the work between two members of Parliament and cause duplication of work for members of SEMA. And whereas the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission is seeking public input on its proposed riding boundary changes, yet has scheduled on one in-person consultation in Northern Ontario to be held in Timmins. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of West Nipissing calls on the Electoral Boundary Commission to not reduce the number of MPs for Northern Ontario, and it respects the current geographical boundaries for those in Nickel Belt. Be it further resolved that the commission follows its rules and consider our community interest and identity and the historical pattern of electoral district in the province when determining reasonable electoral district boundaries for our community. Be it further resolved that the commission add an in-person consultation meeting to be held in Sudbury in order for all those residing in Nickel Belt to have an opportunity to meet in person with the commission. Be it further resolved that the municipality of West Nipissing recommends that all SEMA members adopt a similar resolution.
Discussion. Conseiller Normand, Conseiller Lease.
Yeah, me
Conseiller
have some very deep concern about this boundary change, and that's why I've talked to a lot of people trying to motivate them to, support our local MP right now and to do all they can to make sure that we can convince the commission, Electoral Boundary Commission, not to change our boundary. Because personally, I think we should have not lose one, but add one and be more closer to the provincial standard of boundary. Secondly, and I don't know if it's proper for me to say this in a public meeting, but I'll say it just the same.
I'm sure we heard it.
One of the concern I have is right now, all the urban areas within the riding are similar in size, whether you're looking at, French River, West Nipissing, Sturgeon Falls, the other communities further north. So we have a lot of common interests. We understand their problem, they understand it. But if they attach us to a big city, and I have no problem with big city, what will we get? No, usually they will get control of the situation. And when the federal government comes up with a program, they will take the top of it. And if there's anything left over, we'll be left with a bowl of leftover. And I think the sharing of resources will be limited to us. And that's my concern. I don't know if it's proper for me to say that in public, that I'm not against the big city, but I prefer that we stay within groups that are similar to us, and we get along very good with our neighboring municipalities. That's basically one of my big concerns.
And
Thank you.
it's really proper because this is being imposed right now or considering to be imposed. And if we have an opportunity to voice our concern and our objections, and it does make sense. Jose Luis?
Well, exactly, and I think there's nothing wrong saying that because that's a reality. And I mean, it would not be the first time that the North has been set aside and treated differently, and it's not being negative, it's a reality. So, and there's a lot of factor within that we need to consider, and you're right, we need to have, not to decrease, and but the fact remain, and I saw 2 petitions going on Facebook to ask people to sign, so that would help. But I mean, if it's like usually sometime that it happened, and I'll say sometime, not all the time, but probably decision has been made, then hopefully not.
Yeah.
But at least we said what we talked.
Could I have a supplemental also?
Conseil Normand?
Could I request that, I guess it's not on the agenda, that at our next meeting, the first one that we look at the possibility of sending a delegation to represent us in person, because I think it's fine to send a piece of paper, but they will just put that in 2 pounds. They will say we've got 30 letters out of a population of 100,000, so they don't take us seriously. But if you're looking at them and standing in front of the commissioner, and if you have 20, 30 people, really, and if we keep them up until midnight at night, I don't care, but we make sure that they understand our problem. So I would suggest, I don't think we can discuss this tonight because it's not on the agenda, but I would recommend that we look at
But the hearing and the objections and the information needs to be disseminated and done to the commission. There is a timeline of registration for to be able to proceed with that, and it's September 25th. So I think it is due proper that we discuss it because it has to do with the boundary changes.
So I don't know if the other member of council support me there, but.
I'll
Yeah.
keep that. I've kept note of it, but I think what we should do is focus maybe on the resolution to see if there's any tweaking, if we're comfortable with this resolution, and then we can discuss what is the next step pertaining to the resolution.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
Okay. I saw that, my apologies, there were hands up. I believe Conseil Dan, Conseil Chris.
I didn't have my hand up.
Okay, but Conseil Dan, I believe, did have his hand up.
Well, I was just going to reiterate what you just made as a comment that any delegation has to be written before the 25th of September. The document has to be presented. And then, like Councillor Norm said, then that document that we would present from our municipality would have to be, in his comments, would have to be in person. And I think that's so just to summarize what both of you said, it would be a good idea to do it in person. However, the document has to be prepared by the 25th and it has to be submitted.
Okay. But coming back to the actual resolution that was presented, do we agree with this resolution?
Yeah.
Are there any concilios?
Well, he agrees.
Oh, you mean, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree, Madam Mayor.
Okay, because I wanted to make sure that we're comfortable with the resolution and that it basically touches all the elements that we want to convey to the commission and also convey the same message as the neighboring municipalities have done and are doing. Okay. Now, coming back to the issue of submitting this documentation on behalf of West Nipissing, as I identified, the timeline, the deadline is September 25th. There's already been a joint media release that has been done by SEMA mayors, including myself, to ensure that the media would receive the information that we do not support what's being provided, what's being done by the commission right now in reducing representation, a seat in the north, and with the proposed boundary changes. So that's been done. The timeline to register for the hearing is the 25th, just around the corner. I've taken the initiative to already register because there was a lot of pressure not to miss out on the opportunity. The public hearing is taking place right now in Timmins. There's been no proposed changes that one would be done in Sudbury. And the hearings are scheduled for October 11th between the hours of 6:30 and 9 o'clock at night. I've taken the liberty to speak with the mayors of SEMA and also with our member of parliament to also see if there could be an opportunity to have a joint delegation of the 5 mayors to really articulate our objection. So that's an update. And I do agree, if there's an opportunity to have it in person, if the opportunity is given by the commission to do it in person instead of an electronic delegation, I think it has more merit to do it in person than to do it electronically. And I'm really happy that Conseiller Norm identified that. And I have no objection to represent the municipality to bring forward the concerns and object to what is being proposed, if everyone is in agreement with that.
For the support. And
Conseiller Normand?
yeah, and if some other members like us who are in the campaign, so if some other member or person at the time awarded to attend, I guess it would be welcome also, or
I'm waiting to find out. I just received acknowledgement and the commission, you're talking about the delegation.
Yeah.
The commission right now just replied via email saying that they would communicate with me at a later time.
okay.
That's the only info I have so far. But I would also recommend another step. And if the municipality could proceed through our social media and sharing the link where residents, organizations, and community stakeholders can also register with the commission to voice their concerns and to submit documentation of why they object to the proposed changes. Because the commission will also be hearing from other stakeholders and individuals within the affected areas. So I think that would be a great step as well to encourage and engage stakeholders in their community. And we should advocate for them to really provide the information, to really take the initiative to object.
Yeah.
Conseiller
And on that,
Normand?
that subject, I've already took the liberty to talk a couple, not the whole board, but a couple of board members of the co-op, which are very concerned about this issue because we have within the riding, the agricultural sector contributes over $40 million per year in commercial activities. So they are, and we are all part of the same group. And so that's why I'm trying to encourage them to, that's why I was asking if we could, if maybe your worship could talk to them also and encourage them, or share a bus to go there or whatever. But the more people that I think we can stand in front of them, I think it will have a bigger impact.
I don't disagree. I completely agree, but they also have to register.
Yeah.
So, is everyone in agreement that we provide direction to our CEO that through communication and through our social media that we do a blitz pertaining to this to encourage local groups to also object and make sure that their voice is being heard? Any objections?
No, I'm fully in agreement with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions directed from our CEO pertaining to this matter?
Well, I guess I won't speak to the topic. I just wanted to assist you, and absolutely we'll get on it. Communications will get on it first thing. Perhaps Councillor Millette would speak. My only comment, Madam Mayor, is that if you registered and the 25th being a Sunday, if you need anything, if you want us to craft something with your signature, it'll happen tomorrow. And so if we're submitting a copy of this resolution with a letter crafted with your signature, that will have to be done tomorrow to be submitted tomorrow. That's the only point I'm making. And we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. And that would be greatly appreciated because it is required. Conseiller Leo?
Yes, Madam Mayor, is the First Nations involved in SEMA with delegation? Do you have any idea?
No, they are not.
Okay. They're on their own. I mean, I know they're supposed to have a different voice through that delegation. I'm not that delegation, but the boundaries, if I'm correct.
I do know that right now, Nipissing First Nation, our neighboring First Nation, it's not within the same federal writing as we are.
Right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So in conclusion, we make sure that we are registered, that we have the proper supporting documentation with the assistance of our staff communication, and also some type of media notification on our Facebook to encourage stakeholders to voice their concerns. And also, a copy of this resolution needs to be forwarded to our local MP, because I know that the northern MPs are working together in making sure to voice their concerns, on making sure that the actual writings in Northern Ontario, as much as possible, are not being reduced. Conseiller Leo?
Yes, but I mean, maybe we should CC to all the MPs in the north, either which party. I think we should send it to all of them. Thank you. CC.
Right now, Conseiller Leo, I do know that our local MP, that is the portfolio that he is actively working on. And that's why he has requested a copy of our resolution and a resolution of all the affected municipalities within Nickel Belt. Okay. So any objections to the resolution?
No.
None? Carried. Adopté. Ceci conclut notre rencontre pour ce soir. This does conclude our meeting for this evening. Is there a mover and a seconder? Conseiller Leo?
Yeah, for the confirmatory bylaw first. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks.
Conseiller Léo, Conseiller Chris.
It's moved by Councillor Millet, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2022-92, being a bylaw of the municipality of West Nipissing, to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on the 22nd day of September 2022, shall come into force and take effect on the date it is passed.
Any objections? None carried. Adopted.
Just the mover and a seconder.
Conseiller Lease, Conseiller Léo.
It is moved by Councillor Lee Senecal and seconded by Councillor Millet. And be it resolved that the special meeting of council held on September 22nd, 2022 be adjourned.
Any objections? Aucune objection? None carried. Adopted. Good evening.